I am NetMoverSitan. Welcome to this first Lobotomy Corporation lore video on abnormalities. Specifically the more humanoid ones, some of which are capable of passing for baseline humanity. Others barely take a humanoid shape. Let us start with the Scorched Girl. Now this is a girl with an affinity with fire, an affinity so great that she scorched herself and yet doesn't suffer any ill effects from her burning. The same can't be said about any employees unfortunate enough to encounter her, as this was a girl that would give the Human Torch a run for his money, if she was capable of flying. The fire she produces is incapable of being extinguished. And they probably tried everything. Fire extinguishers, fire hoses, probably putting her in with the Snow Queen. They might even have tried extracting all the oxygen out of the room. Nothing worked. This fire comes from a match that has impaled her. Some believe this match to be the abnormality, but the girl has been seen weeping, so it's unlikely, especially considering how some come into being. One doctor who researched her had this to say: "The charred body signifies the child's shattered hope, while the perpetual fire means her desire for affection. She is always struggling between the two." At least one of them didn't think much of this. Those that work on her can only hope that she doesn't get worse. What could the shattered hope stem from? The hope that she'd be accepted, whether that be by family, friends, perhaps those who sought adoption that wouldn't take her. Well, this shattered hope had incendiary consequences for her exterior. What about the perpetual fire? That which signifies her desire for affection. It would seem to reinforce that she wasn't valued by someone, although where the giant match came from, that some believe to be the abnormality rather than her, that's less clear. When she breaches a random employee, it can either be an agent or a clerk in the same department, will be marked with Scorched Girl's match above them. She'll walk to whoever the marked is, unless she is either suppressed or the employee is reached. Then, after 5 seconds, she'll explode like the background of a 1980s/1990s action movie, causing a lot of red damage to any nearby. She'll then reappear in her containment unit with her grip-off counter reset. Thankfully, she's physically weak and slow as so it shouldn't be too hard to suppress her before this occurs. Also, it's no good killing the marked employee, she'll just mark another one. If you're looking for cheerful stories, best look elsewhere, as the next one is The Old Lady. This old lady wants to read a story to any that enter her chamber, which can vary from visit to visit. She believes that her visitor is a child. She doesn't stop telling stories until its listener, or rather her listener, leaves. I'm guessing that those that visit her decide to humour her, seeing as her senses have declined in her old age, and that there are consequences for not attending to her often enough. Yes, there are consequences. She doesn't want to be alone. When she feels too alone, her solitude fills her containment unit and consumes the next one that enters it, attacking their mind and preventing them from doing anything until they lose their minds. Or it passes. It's as if to say, leave me alone too long, I'll make you feel the same way I have been. As in, if I can't be happy, no one else should be either. Could be worse. She could have been a believer in collective guilt, where all within a group are punished for the actions of one within them, regardless of the amount of culpability. Oh, and that's something that predates communism, so it's no good blaming them. Want to see something truly disgusting? Next, it's the Nameless Fetus. This is something that wouldn't be out of place in a Silent Hill game. Something that looks like an unborn fetus with skin. That has a sticky, slime-like liquid and many visible veins. It has needs that are never truly satisfied. Whatever they are. Although one of them is to be fed. Failure to do so results in its stress increasing. This results in its bursting into tears and crying. Thankfully, such a being doesn't exist in reality, as a fetus that looks even close to that is stillborn. Now you're probably asking, how can this abnormality get worse? Well, those that hear it start to feel damage to their mental health, and other abnormalities that can breach or otherwise have adverse effects will be triggered by this and do what they do, if left to do so. To stop it crying, the employees need to play a game of Russian roulette. But instead of a gun with a single bullet, they spin the wheel, and the employee that is selected is sent to be eaten by this underdeveloped horror. Yeah, it's a cannibal. One that Hannibal Lecter would not approve of, as he might be a psychopath, as in pure evil, but he's one with standards. I mean, even he wouldn't eat other humans like they were a small bar of chocolates, as in messily and without any refinement. As for how this is depicted to employees, yeah, you're not going to like this bit. This is dressed up in a special event only for employees. It can happen at any time, although why it's held is unknown to them, where they're said that those selected are lucky, where their family will be gifted with unimaginable fortune, where they're promoted to another branch of the company called the Central Headquarter, where no monsters will attack them and no co-worker will die. Sickening, isn't it? Sounds like the Nazis referring to their genocidal actions as relocation. Makes it sound so ordinary and mundane. Some employees know better. As for the money that's sent to their families, that's likely to prevent any questions that the company would prefer not be asked. It's strictly forbidden to the public eye. Well, only the management, need know anything about the specifics. The employee selected must either be one who questions the purpose of the company, has conducted or planned an unauthorized experiment on abnormalities, or those that have excessive curiosity about abnormalities and did the previous, or one who has suffered excessive physical or psychological damage. The definition of unauthorized being that which the company or Angela didn't authorize. This results in all records about that employee being deleted, feeding the employee to the Nameless Fetus, and informing that employee's family of the branch transfer. Only just better than the Ministry of Truth from George Orwell's 1984, isn't it? Although, not by a huge margin. Some of you might be thinking, is this the worst that Lobotomy Corporation has to offer? Not even close. Next, it's the wall gazer. A naked woman with long, mournful hair who is always facing the wall, talking to herself and weeping. She tries to talk or get the attention of employees who try to leave her containment unit. Looking back is unwise. Because if Senpai notices her, and I can't believe I just said it like that, when she pleads or maliciously whispers at the employee, and especially if she knows that employee's name and calls them by it, she will turn around and scream at that employee and traumatize them in a way that makes them stare at the wall. Yeah, not the nicest of ladies, is she? Oh yes. Those with a high enough temperance can avoid this, although she'll attack the whole department if her whip-off counter reaches 0. Sounds like a milder version of creepypasta, doesn't it? As for why she weeps, could it be that she's experienced a personal loss and doesn't want sympathy or pity from others, where any attempt to relieve her grief will backfire in a way that could break the minds of others? Sounds like a victim/martyr complex, doesn't it? The quip-off counter shows how close an abnormality is to breaching. Once it reaches 0, it breaches. Some abnormalities have an X, where numbers should be, which means that it either doesn't breach or has more specific conditions. That's basically how the quip-off counter works. Yeah, probably should have put that at the start, but let's move on to one more sociable. The Forsaken Murderer. This cross between Hammerhead and Colossus is a prisoner of a more conventional prison. Well, at least he was, although he was forced to put on a straitjacket due to how violent he was. Not that stops him. No amount of chains and restraints could stop him. He hates everything and his brain is damaged due to the amount of rage he felt. Well, not all of us are big green and have a healing factor. He also uses what is implied to be a level of profanity and insults that would make the Italian-American stereotype that isn't from Nintendo blush. That. It'd probably make the Prince of Darkness blush. It was possible that he was a death row prisoner, one who was there for good reasons. That implies that this prisoner was American of origin. Those that studied him injected him with medicine and chemicals, some of which were experimental. They suppressed his aggression and his sense of self. Unfortunately, it wasn't without side effects. He believed that his head was turning into metal. Self-harm was occurring, as he did some literal head-banging, as if he was listening to thrash metal. He had to be put back in a straitjacket, and it was likely someone was going to be punished for gross negligence. As in, making a bad situation, an already bad situation, worse. Yeah. He was turning into a literal metalhead. Those unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end of him would find that out. Okay, this shows the problem of relying on medication to solve mental health issues, where long-term, if not handled carefully, it results in addiction, and at worst, it makes a bad situation worse. Once breaching, the Forsaken Murderer crawls on his knees around the facility, with his metallic hammerhead. He has surprisingly low HP, and has slow to average movement speed. He's usually outrun by panicked clerks. Sad, isn't that? If clerks can outrun him. Never mind agents that are more capable of fighting back. Oh yes, and when near or next to an employee, he slams his metallic head onto the ground where they are, or were located, dealing light red damage in a small area in front of him, if the employee doesn't get out of the way. The targets in the area of attack might receive different amounts of base damage, depending on where they are at the time. He tends to follow nearby employees, including clerks, changing his path whenever the target leaves the room. Yeah. Another one that's not too selective with what they hunt down. Next we have Leticia. She gives gifts to those she likes, but doesn't tell them the contents of it. The gifts are her friends, which turn out to be deadly creatures that kill those she gives them. Apparently she does this as a prank. She wants to find lots of friends and notices that everyone is gloomy in the facility. She's happy when everyone is pleased with her pranks. She clearly doesn't realize why everyone is gloomy in the facility, as everyone that's human within the facility fully understands that they're on borrowed time, that their life expectancy is measured in weeks at most, and that her pranks make retaining friends difficult, mostly because her gifts kill them. She might look like a cute doll or even a small child, but she's a murderous girl and is jealous of others and will remotely kill those that receive a gift from her if they work on another abnormality on that particular day. It's unlikely that she understands that what she's doing is wrong, as she isn't doing what she does out of malice or any other hostile intent. In case it isn't obvious, this is a world where a black and white morality doesn't always apply. In fact, some of those abnormalities don't even understand the concept of morality. Never mind understand how complex it can be. Next is something more tragic. Dream of a black swan. Large families can be much to provide for. This is more likely in less developed places, where either birth control is not known, not accessible, or discouraged. It can also be cultural, where if you haven't started a family by a certain age, you're considered a failure. In this case, it involves a poor family whose parents were dying, and the eldest child, Elijah, she had the gift of honesty and diligence, which were of no help in the short term, but would apparently help long term. Then the city that they were living in was covered by a dense fog. Suspicious timing, isn't it? It certainly made some vomit due to nausea. But those living in that city, they carried on as normal. Elijah was the only one working, and she had to pay off the debts that she'd inherited from her dead parents, and support her brothers, whose wills had broken after many failures. She had this delusion that by working a little harder, things would work out. That joke was before it was first told. Tell that to those stuck in dead-end jobs or those who work themselves to death at worst. Actually, the worst part of that is some bosses actually count on that, even believing that those that don't work harder for less aren't trying hard enough. Send some toilet paper. They need it to wipe the out of their mouths. While some left the city, another said that the city was... She paid no attention to the doomsayers, even when she experienced nausea and blisters all over her body. Clearly this was around a time when concepts such as working smarter, not harder, would have been considered the words of the insane. She made clothing out of nettle and gave them to her brothers, which gave them all hope briefly. It didn't last. Why, you may ask? Well, one day, she bumped into someone and he couldn't get up. She wanted to help him up, but he slapped her hand away and got up on his own, but collapsed again. Not long after. This man was running from something. She wanted to ask what was wrong, but he was ahead of her there. He vomited out a mix of blood and green goo from every visible orifice. This wisely caused her to run, as she heard a loud roaring in the distance. The smoke was causing everyone to either lie down and smoke, or turn into what was making that noise. She decided to do what that stranger did, as her brothers appeared to be unchanged. Each of her brothers will change whenever a normal or bad result occurs, along with when 5 or more employees die within the facility, or have a panic attack, and whenever abnormalities escape 3 times, or if a Quiff-Off meltdown occurs, or if left unchecked by a black fixer, if left to do its work. When all 5 change, she breaches, turning into the form of a hybrid of herself and a black swan. She appears similar to a large bird-like creature with a black feathered body, wearing a necklace like her brother's. The neck of the bird ends in what seems to be a beak, revealing the head of the abnormality. She has grey skin and smooth blonde hair, similar to her brother's. Her head composed of 2 heads fused together at the eyes, giving her 2 mouths and noses and 3 eyes. She has feathered arms with grey hands and dark wings, and holds an umbrella with an orange striped handle and black feathers. She has 2 orange striped humanoid legs. Yeah. I think we know what that fog turned some of them into, and how some had more resistance to that than others. The sister has moderately high HP, average movement speed, and roams the facility, smacking other employees with her umbrella, dealing an average amount of red damage at close range. She can also open her umbrella and move forward with it, dealing black damage against the employees that she passes through, and deflecting any damage back to the attackers who are in front of her. If she passes another Abnormalities containment room, or containment unit, depending on how you think of it, and it possesses a Quiff-Off counter, it will drop by 1. If it reaches 0, it will trigger the ability of said abnormality, leading to more breaches or other events. After she takes enough damage, the beak will close and she will change to be more like a swan. Her attacks remain the same, but with a new addition. She will stop to let out a screech, decreasing the Quiff-Off counter of nearby abnormalities by 1. She will remain in the facility until suppressed, or until the day ends. Yeah, not something to be taken lightly. The best way to avoid that is not to let it happen at all. And not to let that happen at all involves making sure that the grep-off counter doesn't go to 0. I know. Easier said than done. But with the right selection of abnormalities, it's possible. Right. What's the next abnormality to cover in this? Believe me, it keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? Next, we have something that can be described as nightmare fuel. Nothing there. This one appears as a mass of flesh, skin, and organs that can change into the employee that panics in its containment unit, or was killed by it. Sounds like the Thing, and not the Rocky kind. I'm talking about the one that was in a couple of horror movies. One of them, a remake involving John Carpenter. This is likely to happen if the fortitude rating is too low, if the justice rating isn't high enough, or if the work had a bad result. Although it does so by devouring the employee and wearing their skin. It's apparently capable of evolving, acting like the one it killed, in order to blend in with humans. One reason for this is to get close to another human in order to attack them in its true form, and repeat the cycle. Attacking with more strength than the form it takes, which also causes terror to those that encounter it. While it is capable of passing for the one it kills, it's not perfect, as the skin doesn't look right and organs stick out of the body. It's at least like a mirror bird, where it copies sounds without knowing what it's talking about. At most, it copies the behavior, talking habits, likes and dislikes more convincingly, all in the attempt to better pass for human. Although there's one incident that resulted in it saying, "Manager, manager." There's a reason for that. A reason that is tied to it's due to an experiment that involved a rebirth while looking into the test subject's own soul. This resulted in the test subject changing into nothing there. Later, his family was introduced to this abnormality. It devoured them and mimicked them. It wasn't evil, although it wasn't fully in control of itself either. And this experiment was sanctioned by Angela to determine the loss of humanity. Yeah. The amorality is quite clear. Tippereff knew something about this, and Gebura knew those that took part. I'll save the more detailed version of this for Gebura's lore section, as she is connected to this. When the agent in the containment unit is killed by nothing there, it will take the employee's skin, taking the appearance of the dead employee while still in containment. It will keep the new appearance for a while until another employee enters its room. It will frequently say, "I love you." If another employee who enters the containment unit panics, nothing there will kill the employee and decrease its quip-off counter, breaching immediately. After the task is completed, or at the start of the breach, nothing there will return to its normal form. Yeah, this is one of the more dangerous ones. If an employee panics in its containment unit, without nothing there wearing skin, it will kill and disguise as the employee. Breaching with the disguise on, organ pieces will block the screen of the manager temporarily before it breaches. After being removed, nothing there will appear in a random location in the facility, which can be hallways and main rooms. The manager will enter into disposal mode, where they get a single shot and 10 seconds to instantly defeat nothing there. The time for everyone else will be paused during this. The manager must kill nothing there disguised as the previous employee to succeed, which will return to its containment unit and reset the counter and form, if successful. If the time runs out or the correct employee isn't shot, nothing there will reveal its normal form and continue with the escape. The escape occurring when the quip-off counter reaches 0. In the first form, it has a high amount of HP and movement speed. Nothing there can use the claw on its head to deal strong red damage to a nearby employee. After a period of time, it will enter into an egg-like form, made of flesh and blue eyes, recovering all its HP. In this form, it will be incapable of attacking or moving, but increase more of its HP. Yeah. A durable cocoon in which to pupate and undergo a terrifying metamorphosis. Speaking of which, if nothing there isn't subdued quickly while in this form, it will recover all of its HP again and will transform into its final form, a tall red humanoid figure with big eyes and a mouth, and a secondary mouth on its body, with an intestine coming out of it. Nothing there can morph its own arms to create deadly weapons to do different attacks. It uses as a basic attack a mace arm to deal heavy red damage to targets in front of itself in melee range. And believe me, that's not the worst it can deal. Oh no, not even close. It can get on one knee and shoot out a piercing projectile from its hand that deals heavy red damage to all the targets in front of itself in the room while saying, "Hello!" It also has an uncommon attack that morphs its arms into a wide blade, slashing the targets in front of itself in melee range, saying, "Goodbye." I wouldn't want to know what it does before saying, "Very good." Because that blade arc deals massive red damage. And if left alone for a short period of time without taking damage, its HP will rapidly restore. It will seek out a large group of employees, as in many to kill, and will remain breathing until it's suppressed or the day ends. Although when this happens, it's likely that it needs to be suppressed or the day will end in failure, as this can decimate an entire team of agents throughout the facility, even if they attack in force. Next, we have the music critic's nightmare, the Silent Orchestra. An abnormality that has an event that can take out the whole facility by attacking the minds of those within the area of effects. He's also vulnerable to different attacks as the movements progress. His soul is vulnerable in the first movement. Then both his body and mind are open to attack in the second movement. Then just the mind in the third movement. Then just the body in the fourth movement. Then he is invulnerable during the finale. And then it's all over, both for the performance and those that are damaged sufficiently. The facility is one house that you do not want him to bring down, literally or metaphorically. He loves art, tries to play music, and even corrects the errors of those that have some form of musical ability. The musicians appear in each movement, each strengthening the effect of the conductor and the music that they produce. Although it appears that he's triggered by those who are either too good at working with him or too bad with working with him, as that's what can cause him to breach. Next we have Army in Black. A soldier who originally wore pink, the colour of trust in Korea, that has turned to black and is encased in a pink heart that turns black when that trust is broken. If an employee is protected by them, by making them hard to kill and healing all in the same area, it increases the risk of them breaching. Yes, it can also drive any employee insane if lower than level 3. This applies even when they are breaching. They also hate repression work and employees dying. 1 grip-off counter lowered for every 5 dead for any reason other than by execution bullets. When they breach, multiple black hearts appear that go for the main room. In each section they appear in order to explode and damage and or kill any that are still there. They also attack all within the same area that they're in with that attack. If they stand still for too long, or rather float still. They're capable of communicating with humans, initially friendly, identifying itself as an unspecific special force and has a hive mind with the intent to help humans. They protect the hearts of good humans and make the bad hearts of some humans good. They gladly do questionable tasks for the good-hearted. Black and white morality, I know. Initially wary of it, the facility used them many times, to help. Agents use them to bolster themselves in a way that makes them more easily able to survive and improve their quality of life. Yeah. They wanted to use that abnormality with suppressions, being superior to human soldiers, even though they went darker, which should have been more ominous to the agent that recommended that. They changed into army in black, which drove away good thoughts rather than bad, bringing death instead of protecting life. As for their origins, it's implied that they were once conventional soldiers, possibly those that fought in the war that happened in the past, but at some point they became more than human and developed a hive mind. There is also the possibility that they were an early experiment with cogito, which didn't have the effects that was expected, and resulted in them being created. A dangerous abnormality, but for one that understands them well enough. They can be useful. As for when they breach, it is possible to avoid them. It's just a matter of worrying whether or not any other abnormalities will be affected by them. If you want to see what's wrong with the society within the world of the Lobotomy Corporation, just check out Shylock Today. This one has a chance of success that changes with the temperance of the agent, and whichever face is chosen at the time of working on it. The happier the face, the better the result. A good result grants mental healing. The angry face multiplies damage by 2. The sad face multiplies damage by 1.5. The neutral face has no effects. The slightly happy face heals mental damage, while the happiest face damage is halved and both physical and mental damage is healed upon successful work. This used to be a female, where on one sunny day she was drying laundry. She was sad when sacrificing was taking place in the city for a company that had a very high value. This was a look that was discouraged by that city. She was called out on that more than once, believing her expression was infectious, and she was being selfish, and that she should be more, well, at least look more pleased, as she wasn't living in the outskirts, suggesting that she was one of the more better-off inhabitants of the city. As in, living in a nest. As a consequence of that, she decided to dry her own skin one sunny day, faking a smile to get everyone off her back. When they asked what's wrong, she responded, "I'm just shy, that's all, just shy." She was making masks from her own skin, the space between that and her true face being the only personal space left. Leaving that alone was the last generosity that the city could offer. To some, anyone different is wrong. Honestly, what would they do if she didn't do that? Bring out the Fort Police and arrest her for wrongthink. See what I mean now? If someone is looking sad at the sacrifices that they're made to offer, it's a sign that there's something wrong with society, isn't it? Clearly not to them, as they don't believe in treating mental health, considering that they're pressuring her, resulting in her becoming a non-cannibalistic, more passive version of a Leatherface. Yeah, that's the sick joke of this story. Anyone wonder why I'm not laughing? The answer's simple. The joke was rubbish. Well, that's the end of part 1 of the Humanoids Abnormality Law. Part 2 will follow. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!